Morning, guys. This is going to be our third devotional in 1 Samuel chapter 20, and I'm really loving this chapter at the moment. Just digging a whole bunch more stuff in here for the rest of the week. But today I'd like to read towards the end of the verse. It's 1 Samuel chapter 20, reading from verse 41. It says, "After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times with his face to the ground. Then they kissed each other and wept together. But David wept the most. Jonathan said to David, 'Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, The Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever.' Then David left, and Jonathan went back to town." And so the context here is David comes to Jonathan and is like, "Bro, your dad wants to kill me." And Jonathan's like, "Whatever would make you say that?" And then David's like, "He's tried to pin me to the wall, a couple of times with a spear, and he's angry with me." And Jonathan's like, "No ways. I don't believe you. I'll check for myself." So Jonathan goes and talks to his dad about David. And Saul gets so angry, like Cindy said on Monday, that he throws a spear himself at his own son to try and kill him. And Jonathan storms out, super angry with his dad, but realizing what has gone down. And so what happens is Jonathan now goes out into the field to go talk to David and to tell him, "Look, turns out my dad does want to kill you. Like, you need to get out of here." And I'd like to talk just quickly today about what do we do when our path towards what we believe our promised future is, the immediate part of that path doesn't seem to line up with the big picture of the path. What do I mean by that? Well, David had been on a journey from outside, staying with his dad, and then he'd come and he'd played for Saul a little bit in the band and helped Saul when he had that evil spirit. Then he kills Goliath and he gets called in. He's part of Saul's bodyguards, and he's a commander in the army. So the journey that Samuel prophesied all the way back at the beginning of 1 Samuel, that prophecy now is beginning to work itself out. David's getting closer and closer to the throne. He's going to become king, right? And now, all of a sudden, it seems like there's this huge U-turn, and David now, instead of coming closer to the throne, is being hoofed out, and now he's a man on the run. And he has to get away from he has to get away from Saul. I'd like to say this, that for us, we have a very clear picture in our minds sometimes. God will give us a promise, or we feel something in our heart of what we want to achieve. We've got a very clear picture of how that thing's going to work itself out. So if you had to use the analogy of a car going from, say, Johannesburg down to Durban, just because God has promised us that where we are here in Johannesburg and I'm going to get to Durban, for instance, doesn't necessarily mean that he always takes the straightest route. And I've come to see that about God. God is more than happy to take us from Johannesburg to Durban via Cape Town. More than happy to do that. He's more than happy to take us on whatever detour he wants, because he is not as obsessed with the destination as we are. We are so destination obsessed. We are so the fulfillment of the promise obsessed. And God is committed to the journey of getting us there, working some stuff out inside of us and changing us and transforming us. I think it's really important to understand that there's 2 things, that fruitfulness doesn't always mean, and success doesn't always mean the favor of God. And we think that. I look at someone who's doing well, or someone who appears happy, and I think, oh, that must mean that God is happy with him. Friends, it doesn't necessarily mean that. The Bible teaches us that God's rain falls on the righteous and the unrighteous as blessings. And also, when we go through hard times, it doesn't mean that God is hurting us or God is against us. It's the disfavor of God at all. Hebrews chapter 12 verse 6 says, "For the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises every son whom he receives." And so God is working inside of us. And sometimes the hardship, sometimes the detour via Cape Town, sometimes the off the freeway on the dirt roads up and down the mountains. And I'm like, "Lord, you promised me Durban. Where on earth are we? Like, this isn't even on the GPS. We've driven off the map." And God says, "I'm taking you here because I'm interested in changing you and transforming you and setting you free from yourself so that you can accomplish what I've called you to accomplish." Finish with this quick story. There's a very famous coffee in the world. I've drunk 1 cup of it in my life because a friend brought me some back from overseas. It's called Kopi Luwak. And Kopi Luwak is the most expensive coffee in the world. It's supposed to be the nicest coffee in the world. It's ridiculous price. You can go look up how expensive it is. But what makes Kopi Luwak different from every other coffee in the world is not the beans. It's not even the roasting process. It's what happens to the beans after they grow. So the bean grows, and then it's eaten by this Asian palm civet, a giant rat, if you like. This thing eats these coffee beans and then defecates them out, right? Poos them out all over the place. And then the people go scratching around in the thing's poo. They get the coffee beans out, they roast them, and they turn that into coffee. And that is the most expensive coffee in the world. It is served in the finest restaurants in the world. And I think for some of us, when God promises us that He's going to make something of our lives and He's going to do something in us, we've got this dream that God's going to take us on this incredible journey, and He's going to carefully tend our lives, carefully pick the coffee beans and carefully roast them and prepare them, and then carefully grind them and get them all ready. And for some people, perhaps that's the journey. But friends, for others of us, maybe our journey into God's purpose is through the colon of a bad situation. And so we think the journey's like this. Next minute, something's busy eating us and chewing us up. It's got a bit dark and stinky in here, and eventually we get pooped out the back end, and we wonder if God's forgotten us. But He hasn't forgotten us, because He's got us in this incredible process, perfecting us and transforming us and purifying us and preparing us. All the stuff that we learn on that journey is everything we're going to need to be able to walk out that eventual purpose. If we try to take a shortcut, we're going to miss out, and we're not going to be ready to walk into what God has for us. So can I say this today? If you're in a bit of a hard time and you feel a bit like David, like I was so close, and then all of a sudden this coronavirus thing happened. I was so close, and then this relational thing happened. I was so close, like David. I was so close to being the king. I could see the throne every day. And now all of a sudden I'm running for my life and I'm out there. How on earth have I lost the promises of God? No, you haven't. It doesn't mean that God isn't with us. In fact, when Jonathan goes back to David and he explains about his dad, he doesn't say to David, my dad's an idiot, you're going to have to leave. He goes, the Lord wants you to leave. He understands that God has a bigger picture in all of this thing. Can I say this? God has got you in His hand. He's holding you. Please don't look at your life and go, well, if this was better and that was better and that was better, it would mean God is with me. Friends, God is with us in the storm. He doesn't take us necessarily out of the storm always. He gets us through the storm. We don't live in the storm. But just because there is a bit of a storm doesn't mean God isn't with us. And if you're in a period of process at the moment, in a period of preparation, go for it. Stick the course, because Jesus is preparing you for something amazing. I'll see you tomorrow morning.